I think, Kamalji, we
We
should
can
begin.
start. We can start. So, just to recap, you remember last time when we met, we had rather ambitiously thought that we would have both the segments, which is which is an individual segment where we talked about ourselves, and everybody came to know so much about each other that we would never have known otherwise. In a normal program, you would never have known, because in a normal program there is a speaker and we just listen, and then by the end, one or two people ask questions, and that's the end of the program. So that was very, very valuable. And so, as we expected, because of the time factor, we thought that we would need another segment where we would explore in the way Krishnaji talks about open dialogue, which is not to say that somebody has all the answers, not that way, but just to have an open dialogue where there is an open discussion. And often, some of the revelations to oneself, they probably come later. I have always noticed that some of the revelations to oneself come later, well after the program. So that's how we thought. What I did was, after seeing the video, I tried to sort of capture some of the key things that were raised in that program, last program. And there may have been one or two more. So if I missed out anything, you can always, I think we can point out. But then, Sanjay rightly said that it's a good idea to start somewhere, because you can't start with all the things together. So I thought that maybe we could start with the point that Yash had raised. Yash, actually, after wonderfully talking about the way he's been exploring all the things that he's been going through, and at the end he said, well, at the end of it, I'm really looking for a clarity through which I can respond to the challenges of living. So I thought we would start with that, and then it's possible that we could then, if we've done enough of it, then we could go on to some of the other issues. I would call them the individual issues. Like there was the issue of hurt, there was the issue of duality, being one thing on the outside and being one thing differently at home. We mentioned that. Some people mentioned about just the problem of just being intellectually inquiring. So not really inquiring. So I thought we would start with that. We start with what Yash had said, seeking clarity from which one can meet the challenges of living. So with that, I think, basically, I think the floor is open. And, I think just the only thing is, when one person is talking, when one friend is talking, the others will stay muted. And then we just carry the flow of discussion from the first contribution, and then we just move on. So that's the idea. So over to the floor. Now, just to add one more thing, I think, is that we have one small video that we will play around 12 noon, actually. It's a very nice video. It's a 15-minute video, which you will find of great relevance to our overall discussion. Krishnamurti video, where he talks about observation and seeing. So that we might play around 12:15, and then talk about it a little.
Here goes, come on. So that's nice. Yuga, can you hear us? I think he's still connecting to his audio.
To say that, last week, we had, as talked about each other. And then we also identified some of the things that friends had said, that they would like to go into further. So when we had a look at the video again, during this time, we identified some of those things that friends had identified. And Sanjay said, yes, perhaps, we could start with any one of them. And then, I think we'll be able to just perhaps branch off into whatever else we can cover. So that's why we thought perhaps we could start with the point that Yash had said. Yash had said that we are all looking for clarity from a point where, a certain clarity from a point where we can really meet the challenges of living. So that was the first thing that we thought we could explore, because it's quite all-consuming. That particular search is quite all-consuming. So that's why we said we would leave the floor open for friends to start talking about it. And then we just follow, let's see where it takes us. That's the idea. So whoever wants to go first. Provida.
Is Provida there?
Provida is there.
Hello, good morning to you all.
Good morning, Provida.
I started just 2 or 3 questions actually. But I feel that Kamalji and other friends, including myself, most of us think that we are confused and we don't have clarity. The point is, are you really aware that we are confused? And if we are confused at all, perhaps it is so, it is true that we are confused. Can a confused mind even understand what is clarity? It can make a projection about clarity. That is clarity is posited just opposite confusion. Is clarity the opposite of confusion? If it is so, if clarity is the opposite of confusion, then confusion has a linkage with clarity. And then in that case, it is not clarity at all. So the point is, when this question I am addressing to me also, when we are assembled, not today, but some 5 years back, 10 years back, 15 years back, we were gravitated towards the teachings of K. What was our intent? Was there any clarity of intent on our part? Why did we assemble? Why did we gravitate towards the teachings of K, towards KFI, towards certain K centers, all this? And why did we gravitate? Were you clear at that time in terms of our intent of gathering? So how do we know that we are confused? I pose this question to, first of all, Kamalji himself, because he was very much interested in putting across this theme on to all of us. It's a very interesting thing. But Kamalji, how do you know that you are confused at all? And if you are confused, if you're in a confused state of mind, how do you know that there is a clear state of clarity? You have only heard the word clarity mouthed by several people, including yourself, Sayanji, Krishnanji, Krishnaji, Chirojoy, everybody. You have only heard the word. But what is the perfume of clarity? Do you know, do I know who has been suffering from a state of confusion?
Yeah.
That is my first question. Will you please address it?
Yeah. So, Prabhuji, I can only I can only share my own experience. Because I put, in fact, some of you may have read it in my blog. I put it in as an anonymous thing. One of the things that I think that has helped me to understand this whole issue is that when Yash said want clarity to respond to the challenges of living, I can see that there is a problem that using that word clarity in a certain loose manner, because say when I am responding to a situation, if that situation has an element of which I am afraid, you get the point. Sometimes we have all sorts of fears and superstitions. And what happens is either I run away from that situation or I avoid that situation. But the net result is that I cannot see things as they are. And I have experienced this a lot. And I remember writing in that blog that I wish I had come in contact with Krishnaji in my childhood, maybe, because I lost a lot of time living a life where I was abusing my body, I was abusing my mind. And by the time I've come to a point where when I discovered Krishnaji, I'm talking about Krishnaji's teaching, not the person. I've come to a point where this whole entity has lost its ability to think clearly. This is what I also put down in the blog, probably that. So, for me, again, it may differ from person to person. For me, clarity means the ability to be able to see things as they are. I don't have that clarity because my clarity is upset by all the fears and anxieties that I have, even the hatreds that I might have, the prejudices that I may have. I remember, Krishnaji, that particular video we will be seeing, today, later on, 15 minutes, where he says that, you write off people so easily. You use a certain word, communist, and you have all sorts of images about the word communist, and then you've written that guy off completely, totally. And I found that, that's my basic approach, Pravida, is that till this entity is able to see things exactly as they are. Therefore, till fear does not have a grip on my seeing, at the moment it does have, I'll be very honest. There are things I'm very scared about. It may not appear to me, it may not appear to the outside world, but it's a fact that, there are so many things that prevent us from seeing things exactly as they are. And that is what I found most beautiful in Krishnaji's teaching. And I find it the essence of the teaching is that clarity actually means where there is absolutely no distortion in seeing, zero distortion. So that's what I wanted to share, Pramita, just to start. I don't know if it's just a starting point. Maybe we can come back to it again. The confusion is there. Yeah, the confusion is there, sir. But the confusion is there, but then at least you can see that very often you are responding or reacting from distortion. Just because you dislike the person, or you might have a fear about something, so you do not see what is. So that for me is the clarity that Krishnaji points to, where the entity is so free of all these, what we call conditioning. Even fear is conditioning. Even all these things are part of conditioning. So that for me, Pravida, is what I would like to start my starting points, so to speak, just to feed the discussion.
What I mean to say is that, Sir Kamalji, whatever you have told so far, you have given a description of clarity.
Yeah.
But if I am able at all to at least to get an indirect test of clarity, I find that clarity is a state of mind which does not live in time.
Yeah, that is
clarity is a state of timelessness.
Yeah.
And from a state of time, if we want to think about the state of timelessness, are we doing justice to it? Are we doing justice to ourselves? You say that you like others, like me, you also have certain blockades, prejudices, all this and that. So instead of seeking clarity, why don't we, each of us, why don't we gravitate towards the functioning of our own mind? That you are approaching clarity with a sense of prejudice, that we are approaching clarity with a sense of fear, with all these bottlenecks. Yeah. So why don't we have a look out at our bottlenecks instead of seeking clarity? That is my question.
Yeah, I agree with you, Pravida. I agree with you. But I think, what I personally feel that, like when you say things like being in time and then going into timelessness, that sort of thing. I think I would like to be as simple as possible. We are using the word clarity and, what you said, the thing that you mentioned. We are using words because we have to use words. But what I'm basically saying is something very simple. I am not able to see things exactly as they are. And therefore, my responses are colored. For me, that is a problem. Maybe we have used the word clarity. I've used it in that context, but that's only a play of words.
So I'll just add to this what Kamalji, what you've so correctly said. See, after all, Prabhida, even if you say clarity and we're talking about confusion, these are all words. And we are playing around with these words with the limitations of our brains. So when you say not caught up in time, it is the same thing which Kay has been saying all this while, saying that observation is caught up in time. Even when I'm observing an observer, I'm caught up in that observation. And it's never complete because that observation is incomplete because of all that which Kamalji was just saying. My observation is incomplete. And that awareness that the observation is incomplete is the first step. Of course, having an awareness is the beginning. If I don't see anything and I say that I'm not willing to see, that is different. But if I have an inward urge of trying to see it without getting too much into this expression of words and interpretation of words, then again, like Povida earlier also you mentioned this very correctly, that these are not opposites. It does not mean clarity is the opposite of confusion. It does not necessarily mean that. Clarity and clarity also in the sense which Kay says at times, it's at the very supreme level. It is not at the level in which we are even discussing it at times, because he's talking about clarity which is non-verbal. It's a non-verbal, which you even mentioned very correctly last time, saying that that state, that non-verbal state is when the clarity begins. Perhaps it can even begin within yourself. You don't have to go outwards for getting that clarity. And it does not mean that that clarity is completeness, but it gets you out of some confusion with which you see things differently from what you were seeing things because of time and circumstance. So I think that is, I mean, and rightly you are again saying this, because this is precisely what we'll again be seeing this in this video. This is where, because even the observation we are doing is with words. Our observation is, everything is with words. Whatever I'm doing is with words. And moment I'm getting into this whole analog of words, I am caught up. I'm caught up because it's an interpretation. It's the way I express. It's the word has a limitation. And personally, for me, also at this stage of life, and I'm trying to look at things differently, we are looking at it all inwardly to see it differently. I'm not going to see someone else's template to see how he lives his life, but I will try to put it on my template and see how it affects me in that position. And perhaps that's where what Kamalji is saying, that at times we do this in the best of intent, but my template might not necessarily be a template which is in the right sphere to match what is happening in the outward movement.
Also to add, Sayan, mostly I think, we can actually make out, from our responses to situations, we can actually make out that, and that our response is distorted. We can make out actually. But if we are honest, that comes about only if there is an honesty. And I think, in fact, I mean, that's the other thing that I found most beautiful in with Krishnaji's sort of teaching is that if it may take, I think, but if that beautiful ability to be able to see if that happens, only that itself is basically the, sort of good enough to actually perhaps, see. But I agree with Prabhupada also. I think that's, I mean, we are playing around with words. That is also true. But I wanted to put across simply the problem that I face. And when I look for clarity, I'll be quite happy if I can, respond to a situation by seeing things exactly as they are.
No, Kamalji, please, I'm trying to say something. Do you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes,
loud
okay.
and clear.
Okay. Then what I personally feel is that I am not interested in clarity. I am interested in cessation of confusion. Right? Ending of confusion is clarity, perhaps. I don't know what is clarity. If I can negate the existence of confusion, that negation with itself will constitute clarity. But otherwise, clarity will be a mere projection of a confused state of mind. That is what I want to say.
That's true.
But so, is clarity, suppose I watch you, I see that you are putting on a glass, a pair of glasses. Okay, it is a fact. So to you, to me, to mind, human mind, is confusion a fact or it is an idea? If it is a fact, then what are the functionalities? What are the functions of confusion? What is a confused state of mind doing actually, not in terms of idea? Please tell something.
I think Chirojai, Kamalji, sorry, I'm interrupting. Chirojai is putting his hand. Yeah, you want to say something, Chirojai? Unmute yourself. Sure. It's a good idea to put up your hand if anything wants to say something.
Yes.
I just want to say that why we are talking so much about what is clarity. When we think, when we able to think, see things as they are, so the clarity is there. There is no duality. So in that time, there is no question of clarity that whether the clarity is there or cessation of mind, whatever we will say. When I am seeing the things in oneness, a state of, I will not say it is state of mind. It's a thing. I am seeing a thing without. We are talking that our mind is conditioned or something like that. We wear opticals while seeing. We prejudge people. So when we can able to see things without anything, so oneness is there. So in that state of, in that particular moment, we don't require the clarity of mind also. Because in that time you can able to see the whatever, there is nothing between that thing and me.
Mhm.
So in that time you don't ask this question that the clarity, whether the clarity is there or the mind who is seeking for clarity and all this. That's what I think.
That's right. But Provida, one question that comes to my mind is, see, when you're saying the word confusion, the confusion is when the person from which it's originating, right? When I'm saying I'm in a confused state, that means you're acknowledging the fact that there is some turmoil which is happening, which you're terming it as confusion. Because your confusion might not be someone else's confusion and differently. So the moment you're saying that I'm in a confused state and I need clarity, that means there is something in which is disturbing you. That is why you're coming to this basic premise that there is confusion. That itself is a step and beginning by itself. Now, what Kamalji said indirectly is, if I'm in a complete state of bliss, I am happiness, I'm in fulfill, I'm in joy, there might be confusion, but I won't know what confusion is for me at that stage. I won't matter if there's confusion in my life, because I'm in a state of happiness, I'm in a state of bliss, I'm in a state of complete fulfill. I don't realize there is confusion, or confusion in that sense that there is conflict, or there is turmoil, or there is an imbroglio, or there is something which is in equation. But for me, everything is a state of bliss. Now, that is not an alternative for me to stay away from confusion, but I'm in that state of bliss. I'm overlooking everything else which is happening in my life, because I've reached a stage where everything seems to be in tranquil, in equilibrium, in happiness. So reaching that stage itself is where we mortals are assuming that we don't have all the other things. We see what is. We don't get disturbed with the outside world. We are seeing ourselves not as me and I, and we are seeing these are all the byproducts of that process. But if I'm in that state where everything around me is in, I don't find myself being in conflict, then there is tranquility in some way. I don't know. Amit, you want to say something? Sure.
Virda, I hear you saying that the cessation of confusion, is not possible because our approach to the cessation is filled with confusion itself. So, in that regard, I feel that if we can approach our cessation of confusion with a state of what is called as negative capability, it is the ability to be in a state of confusion without the desire or the compulsive need to come to an immediate solution. Because when we immediately need to come to a solution, we are saturating the very process using our own filters of the past conditioning, and that again leads to the confusion because we're again approaching it from a confused point of view.
Absolutely.
Is it possible for us to hold the confusion parallelly so that a creative solution can emerge, or a way of looking at an unsaturated point of view or a situation can emerge, where although we cannot rid ourselves of our past filters at that point in time, at the same time we are putting it in abeyance, allowing ourselves to open up to the creative process of something new coming in. Is that what I hear you saying, Prabirda?
Prabirda, unmute করতে হবে আপনাকে.
Hello.
Hi.
Hello. Can you hear me now?
Hi, Prabirda.
So suppose see why I am focusing on Kamalji. It is not that I am personifying him. It is not that, but he is interested in this particular issue, a very important issue. But what I feel that when I say that I am confused, and I know that I am not in a state of clarity. I am confused. The point is, when I say I am confused, so I have got a distaste I have developed a state for the state of confusion. So I have, or rather thought itself has created a division between I and that confused state. What I want to know from Kamalji is are these two different? Whether that I, who is wanting, who is displeased with the state of confusion, and that's state of confusion, are these two things different, or they are one and the same? That is the I itself, which has developed a distaste for the state of confusion. That I itself is the state of confusion. It is not that there is a dichotomy between I and the state of confusion. That is what I would request Kamalji to elaborate and focus on. Please say, Kamalji, please say something.
Yeah. What very briefly, I think what I would prefer. I mean, personally, I find it very difficult to play around with words. The I and the division between that. But for me, for example, and I'll give you one example I read from a story that I was reading today. You may have read it also. Very simple story where the election commissioner Sesson, he had gone on an election tour and he came across this boy who was actually in that mango plantation, and he said, "Can you please give me those nests?" And he said, "I will not do anything to give you those nests." Young boy, young child. And then he said, "But why? I'll give you 50 rupees. And he said that no, because the mother will come, and the mother will actually come and find the babies missing, baby birds missing, and that is intolerable for me." Now, that particular episode for both Mr. Session and Mrs. Session became a sort of a, what I won't call it. It has nothing to do with confusion. It is an instant seeing that happens because you can see the importance of sensitivity. So, I mean, in the same way, as I said, we see these instances every day, day to day. So I'm not even bringing words like, division between I and thought and all that. But we know it. I certainly know it. I often respond with a lot of fear. Sometimes I run away from a situation because I'm scared of something. Even if I have to face it, I go and face it, but there is a lot of fear. Because, what is that? And then one realizes that, whether you call it confusion or whatever you call it, but one does realize that until the entity is totally free, it can never see things as they are. I'm just putting it in slightly different words, Probida. Whatever you said, I'm putting it in slightly different words.
So, Probida, I'll ask you this differently. Can you observe without any reaction? Can you have an observation without reaction? Can you observe what Kamalji is saying without reaction? Is it possible? Yeah, unmute korte hobe. Probida, unmute korun. Shankar's come on. Probida, you need to unmute.
The point is, it is not related to any particular person. A particularity is quite unimportant and beside the point. The point is whether it is possible for the conditioned mind to observe without any reaction.
That's the question.
Perhaps that will be the right question. Whether you can do it, whether my other friends here who are assembled here, whether each of them can do it, that is quite immaterial. Whether it is possible for the conditioned state of mind to observe without the backlash of any reaction.
Correct. That's the question.
Perhaps that is the right question. So a conditioned mind itself is an accumulation of various reactions apart from other things. So conditioned mind, the elements which form the conditioned mind, so many other things are there, so many traditions, all this and that, particularities, so many, as I said, that traditions, so many beliefs, so many disbeliefs, all this, so many ideas, sense of nationality, sense of being a Hindu or Muslim, whatever it is. So all these things combined together, they form the state of conditioned being. And conditioned being is also composed of reactions. So a reactive state of mind I am afraid for a reactive state of mind, it is not possible to observe without reaction. That is what I feel.
So it's incomplete. The observation is incomplete, you're saying.
Definitely, it is incomplete for a conditioned state of mind. A conditioned state of mind, because observation has to have some freedom. It needs to be preceded by freedom, and it needs to be mingled with freedom. Until and unless there is freedom, there cannot be any observation. And because of this observation is not an observation with mere eyes, the sensory organs. Those eyes are initially required, but those observation, the observation of the psychological states, the observation of what is going on everywhere, including the inner state of my being. That observation of that totality, it has to have some freedom, and freedom is outside the bounds of a conditioned mind. That is what I feel. So under no circumstances, a conditioned mind cannot freely observe.
Sugar, you want to say something? Yeah, sure.
Yeah, how about somebody else?
You can
guys.
unmute yourself. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I want to add also that any recognition of what is clarity or what is not clarity will be a matter of experience. So we will be always trapped in this. So I also go with Mr. Kamalji in the sense that the only thing we have then is to deal with facts, right? And the other thing I want to add is we need a space. I remember one conversation between Krishnaji and Pupulji, and I remember that they were going to address some kind of topic, and he said, I'm like a drum. I'm always empty. I always have a space. That's why anything you want to ask me, you just do like this, and I will have everything, because there is a space, no? And I also want to relate this with martial arts, because in martial art, in the, want to say like the ultimate state, you learn the technique, but then you need to forget the technique. And to forget the technique, you need to have a space. And from that space, the techniques will be unlimited. And that's what in Japanese and also in Chinese, they call mushin, which means the space of the soul. So there is completely emptiness. And from that emptiness, then you can, everything can be born, right? So in Aikido is also, in martial arts, I think they deal with this, how to be empty without using memory. Because if you recognize that you, for example, in terms of martial art, you have a technique inside yourself, then you will be applying something that you already know from your memory, and the technique will not be really alive, because you are just imitating something. You are just trying to reproduce something that comes from your mind. So it's really, I think we are tackling with something really difficult, right? Anything through will and recognition will lead you to the same, right? So dealing with facts and with this space without using memory and full attention and observation, which might be partial, I don't know. But at least if I have a candle inside like a very, very dark place, then some light will like expand, and then you might have that state which does not produce any kind of conflict, no inwardly, no outside, and that tide, like observe that tide moving inside outside, is not one of the keys. Thank you.
Very well said. Harsha, you want to say something? I can't see her, so I'll... Harsha, can you hear us? I think she needs to unmute.
I can hear you.
Yeah. Is there anything you want to say, Harsha?
I think what he was talking about, the space element, in the mind, the empty mind, which is there, which we were just in one of our classes with the Sound Savitri, we were reading. And I think what Krishnaji always would say, that you can see a thought enter into your mind. and you can be aware of that thought entering. So whatever realm, when we speak or utter any word, it is dependent on what level of consciousness we are speaking from, because the empty space cannot come even if there's a very, very subtle me in me. So when there's an art like martial arts, which he's saying, it is something which is coming totally from the universe to the universe. And that's why I think the link between the spacelessness of the mind is a very much predominant part in what he shared just now, So that's what I wanted to share, that we has to have some interactions with Krishna ji, and sometimes I would feel also that I'm not able to comprehend immediately what he's saying because it looked very simple, but then it was very, very profound. So ultimately, I think it's one's own assessment of where one is and from where one is living one's life. You will get the clue from that introspection more than anything else, I think,
I think yoga is also saying that you need to be instinctive and listen to yourself distinctly. I mean, listening to yourself, we hardly do it because we listen to ourselves based on our past. But when you listen to yourself with a constant flux and change of an environment of your opponent, then you're listening, you're reacting, which is completely afresh, something new, just like what you do in the thought process. So physicality and the thought both are being interlinked so beautifully when you express that.
That's why I think sensitivity and to be alert are so important in this matter as well. And that's why, well, of course, all of us, I think we agree, like it's good to eat healthy, to have proper exercises every day. And I also want to recall something that Mr. Pravir said in the last Zoom session, that the teachings are not in a verbal state. So if they are not in a verbal state, and we try to do this through recognition and memory, we will never be able to go to the core, right? So I would like to discuss that verbal, non-verbal state. How is possible to be in touch to something that is not verbal? And if it's not verbal, means that we cannot approach it through memory or recognition because it's experience, right?
That's right. Absolutely. Deepika, you want to say something?
Yeah, my point is that we are all observing a situation. When we observe a situation, each one of us comes from a different position. I'll relate my experience to my teaching, because I've been a teacher most of my life, or as an artist. When an artist looks at something or a teacher looks at a child, we see something. But actually, the child may become, the object may have, two artists looked at the same object, they will see something different and they will produce something very different. Yeah. So one artist is saying, I'm saying very clearly, and this is what I see. But the other artist will produce something quite different. Also, when you take a student-child relationship, the teacher doesn't know 100% where the child is coming from, nor does the child know where the teacher is coming from. So both may be coming from a very pure intent, but the child may feel that they want something from the teacher, but the teacher is not able to understand that. So the child will play up in the classroom. And the teacher is coming from the attitude that I want to give the child some information to help them in life. So he's seeing the child as a disruption in the class. And there are many perspectives to the same observation. We are all observing the same moment, but there are different perspectives. So when you are saying clarity, how can you be clear? Because my perspective may be very different from your perspective. And there may be 10 people in the room and each one's perspective may be very, very different. So nobody is
Just to
confused
say,
and nobody is...
Yeah, carry on, Deepika, carry on.
Yeah.
Carry
So
on.
my point is that when I'm saying I'm confused, because I'm trying to maybe relate to somebody else, and because my perspective is different from them, I'm thinking I'm confused. And when I'm saying I'm clear, yet somebody else is saying I'm confused, it's again the same problem. So we are just unnecessarily worrying about these words, clarity and confusion.
Yeah, but Deepika, one thing, just to add something, I'm just using an example to share this, because when you say, suppose somebody is lying on the road, and obviously in need, because the person is all perhaps needs some help, you'll find that the largest percentage of people will just ignore, and they will always have an excuse in their mind, because I have to get home and this and that and the police and all these sort of things. But you will find that there is a small percentage who will not be able to respond other than by saying, I have to help him. Now, what I'm saying is, when that happens, then there is the issue of perspective. It's choiceless. The response is choiceless. So, why I'm saying this is that ultimately, again, when we are talking about clarity, I think we are not talking about the way things they are as they are at the moment. We are saying, well, how do we get to a point where actually our response to living, and that's just an example I gave about that, is actually choiceless. I mean, you don't feel that you have either this opinion or that perspective.
That's right.
I just wanted to put that into the picture.
Right.
It may sound as though I'm talking about clarity, but it's not clarity. It's because your entity is free of opinion. It's free of prejudice. It's free of bias. It's free of all the things that, I think,
Absolutely.
when Hugo talked about the non-verbal state, I think the non-verbal state is, again, giving it a name, which is actually many of these things, the things that we actually feel, till we have a choice, should I help the person or should I not help the person? That's a sign that there is a real problem with clarity. And I would call it confusion also. It's a lack of honesty. It's a lack of honesty, because the being is not yet in a position to respond in the only way it should, which is choiceless. It's just, I want to put that in. Maybe many of the problems arise out of that.
Well done.
You should get some others to speak as well.
Yash wants to say something. Yash, you can unmute yourself.
Yeah, so I just felt, when Yuga was talking about the technique and the need to forget the technique, and I could just relate it with a couple of things. One is that the confusion itself is
Yes, just 1 minute. There's a bit of echo coming on. Is there any other mic on in your room? There's an echo. I can't hear you clearly. Or is it somebody else? There's a noise coming. Is it?
There's some background noise actually. Is it better now?
Yeah, it's better now. It's better now. Sure. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. So what I was saying is that the confusion is composed of a lot of knowledge and mostly of the kind that is this right, is this wrong, and I must do this, should I do that, should I not do that, that sort of knowledge, and along with this knowledge, it's so emotion, that sort of knowledge contributes to emotional turmoil, I feel. And when Kay talks about fragmentation and that inner conflict, and when energy is in conflict with energy, I sort of connect the two. And when Yuga is talking about forgetting the technique, I also I can relate it with the need to sort of forget or be free from this knowledge. And most of the time, I think we are in a uh, in some kind of a pursuit that uh, whether it's getting into something or whether it's getting out of something, uh, and I think that that pursuit sort of uh, doesn't allow us to be free from all this knowledge, and therefore all this confusion, and again, like we've discussed, what is this clarity really, in fact, I actually felt that when we were talking about clarity, like do we really know clarity? Does one, uh, when I'm in confusion and I want clarity, do I actually know clarity? So actually I don't, because and it could possibly be that this wanting clarity is actually a part of the confusion. But at the same time, I do feel that it's like when one uh, goes through it over and over again, it's sort of it is like it presents itself as something very important, like a need, some that it's sort of like a fundamental need, a fundamental requirement for any other thing to happen, and any sensible action, any intelligent action to take place, this clarity is like a fundamental requirement. So uh, and if one acts from this place of confusion, if one thinks from this place of confusion, one is always only adding to the confusion. So
What you're saying.
that's where I sort of see the need for clarity. Uh, but like you were saying that there is like you were saying, there's about forgetting the technique. Uh, there is probably I mean some sort of forgetting of knowledge, some sort of forgetting or suspension. I don't know exactly how, but
I would say it's cease. It must the brain must cease. That the memory must be like suspended, as you say. So in that way, you might discover something different, right? And from that new state, which is you don't want to bring that state by will. It's something that comes naturally, like water, right? In
yeah.
what they
And I've noticed that whenever one comes across a solution of, let's say, a difficult problem that one has been facing for a long time, a very complex issue, it's usually like that. It's like an epiphany. It's that's how insight typically seems to be,
Yeah.
but usually it's like it's not deep enough to be. I mean. The kind of confusion that I've been facing is that it's sort of an all-encompassing thing. That it's like seeing the mess in the world, seeing the mess within me, and seeing the recurrence of that, and where it's not just a matter of solving a problem, or let's say even a very complex problem. But this is maybe what Kay talks about as the total problem, which is very hard to fathom. I mean, but since he's talking about it, my mind goes there, that maybe there's this thing that something that really fundamental, at a really fundamental level, if we are able to get clarity with regard to all this mess outside and within, then is there that kind of a clarity possible? Uh, that's all.
Chiruja, you want to say something? You want to add something? You got your hand up?
Shayan, may I say chip in? Shayan, may I chip in?
Sure.
What I would like to know from the audience here is, including me, those minds which are in a state of confusion, is that state of confusion creating suffering and pain in mind from which one wants to escape by making a projection of a state of clarity in which there will be enough source of pleasure. So from a state of pain, am I trying to jump into a state of pleasure by seeking clarity?
Can I just feed in there, Prabhupada? I think again, this is again feeds into both you were saying and what Yash was saying. I think, we are putting too much of thing into this word clarity. We are looking at it as a one-time thing. But is it a one-time thing? When I respond violently to somebody who is, on the road or whatever, if you are honest, then one can see something which is part of the confusion and therefore a real problem, actually. So I'm just saying, again, Yash, I'm just, suggesting this. I'm just wondering if this is so. I think in our day-to-day living, in our relationships, and particularly even as we go around observing our thoughts also, and you mentioned the mess, actually, and that's the mess that we all possess. I think we are only talking about things that, you can only resolve if that observation is so honest that it looks at it like a absolutely lays it bare, lays it naked, actually,
Kamalji, what is your honesty?
Let me finish.
What is the honesty you are speaking about? Can you clarify? What is honesty?
So let's put it this way. I might actually be knowing or when I'm trying to evade a responsibility or escape a responsibility or whatever. I'm just taking an example. I might for the moment be able to convince myself, no, it's okay, I'm doing right and all that. But if one is really honest, it will expose the fact that you are dishonest. And anything that is not consistent with what one might call a completely, I mentioned the example of helping out the person on the road. The first response of an honest person whose consciousness is absolutely clear of selfishness of any sort will be, I have to help this person. But why doesn't it happen to Y and Z? So, what I'm suggesting is that this problem is not a one-time thing about clarity, all of a sudden you get clarity, But it's something that, if the mess is huge, then, the problem is also, you have to, that observation will also be quite intense. And honesty is actually, yes, the honesty where you are not there in that observation. You're not looking for, at least you don't have a motive. You don't have a motive. Therefore, that's the honesty that one is talking about. So, this is just to feed it, Prabhupada, to what you said, as well as this. I'm not looking at clarity as a one-time thing. I have a feeling that, if the entity is really honest, I think this is what Krishnaji also talks about. At the reality, the testing point, I think, is when one is able to see things exactly as they are. Then even the educator has no problem. Then there is no difference of opinion, actually. There is no difference. Because there is no difference of opinion. There is only one way forward for an unconditioned, in inverted commas, person. In that sense, it's impossible to be unconditioned. But a person who is really free, there can be no choice in a response. But as long as there is a choice, it means there is a sure enough sign that there is a problem. This is what I don't know whether I'm able to express it. It's a bit confused in words. But Joyita hasn't said anything so far.
Joyita hasn't said anything so far.
No, I was listening, and what happens, I don't know, I may offend some people, or it may cause displeasure. At times I feel K is juggling with words only. But clarity of K's teachings comes to me when I interact with you all.
at that moment, that I can't grasp a theory until and unless I can relate it to the practical world. When Kamalji was telling us about that the clarity, or Pravida was talking about, Huga talked it about, that we have to learn something, then we have to forget it. Means when we forget, we have assimilated the thing and it becomes a spontaneous thing. So I was wondering at myself that, and the word about honesty. Yes, until and unless I met you all, or met many people physically or virtually, uh, I was going through phases like, why all these things are happening with me. I couldn't understand why all these things were happening with me, to me or with me. Am I the one at fault, always at fault? And I was upset and angry with it. But when from 2019, when I first attended case teaching at, when I first attended that educating the educators, from that time onwards, I could find that the problem is within myself. For example, I was diagnosed with hypothyroidism and I wasn't able to lose weight. And I thought that taking the medication only would help me lose weight. But then I found that I was being dishonest with me because the doctor had also recommended a certain diet. But I didn't follow that diet, and I was always dishonest with myself. To me, what clarity is, that when I have started being honest with myself and looking at things as they are, means first looking into myself, that anything that is happening around me, what are my reactions? That is, for me, that is clarity. And yes, I had acted from fear many a times. When I'm scared of some person, I become hyperactive. When I'm scared, but and after some time of hyperactivity, I am just drained out. I used to be that way, but the moment that when I started seeing myself the way I am dealing with the problems around me or the persons around me, it helped me to stop what was the turmoil that was going around. And the turmoil was inside me. To me, the moment I started seeing that is a moment of beginning the journey towards clarity. That is all.
Would
Sanjay
Shankar
Gautam,
like to say something? Yes.
Sanjay Gautam,
Sanjay also said something. Sanjay, Gautam, Shankar.
even our film director Gautam.
Gautam.
Well, good morning, everybody. Let me ask you, I mean, at least few of you, simple question. As if I can understand little differently, or I can, I mean, I need some inputs, direct input. So Sanjay was saying last week that every time I approach face to anyone, I mean, whatever happened, but every time now I am asking, give me some clue. Like if I am misbehaving with you, or I mean doing something wrong with you, then when you meet again, I mean after a few days later, then how do you able, or what give me some tip, how do you able to, I mean wipe out everything and uh, start behaving afresh, or start behaving and also Provita was saying like living is teaching. That's so very true. So everything lies on our individual living. Uh, so what I've understood little for last 4 5 years, that case teaching, there are then he never said how. Whenever a person asked how, he just, but some clues are there. So I'm sure you have, especially who were with case teachings and you are dealing with these things for so many years, 10, 15, 20 years. So I'm sure you have found your own clues. So let us share those little things. So it might help us, because ultimately, end of the day, I need to proceed little further. I need to understand little better. I need to inculcate, I need to be influenced by my friend in a positive way. So, shall we talk on that?
Gautam, I can share one example. I don't know whether it's relevant to the point you mentioned, but there is another K group. I think some of you are there, some of you are not there. Another KFI group. It's actually this one. Maybe I think Sanjay. I think is perhaps there. I don't know. Joyita's not there. But what happened? We are all sort of sometimes we keep an eye on that group. And recently, there is a lady, a good friend of ours, right? Actually, she put in a political post, which was, to do with religious identities, and so, I just had to sort of, put in something there which said that, that let us remember the purpose of this group, and it is not for certain things. And this particular post is certainly not in good taste as far as this group is concerned. So, I mentioned this because, that was done without anything in my heart or mind, actually, against any person. It's the issue that is involved. In corporate life, they say the issues are important. The objectivity is important. And then after a couple of days, I rang up the lady, and I knew that she might be upset because I mentioned that in a rather public manner. And I told her that, I hope you didn't mind that. And she took it so nicely. She said that it's such a nice gesture, because she said that the indication I got was that she had been upset, actually. But she said that, the fact that you phoned, and when I thought it over, I think it seemed so obvious. I can't be writing here about, let us be proud of our Hindu religion because, this and that and this and that. Because this is not the place. You can do it elsewhere. But there was not at all a bitter taste in my mind or in her mind. There was nothing. There was nothing at all. But the root thing is that the action itself must be free of any defect, so to speak. Defect meaning the motive should not be wrong, actually. It shouldn't be that I need to teach that person a lesson. Sometimes that happens with the Neta Korte, so that she learns a lesson or he learns a lesson and all this. And I just mentioned this in the context you were saying, Gautam. So I suppose, if the source of the action itself is pure, in inverted commas, that makes it easier. In fact, then there is nothing that stops you from talking to the same person again without any trace of rancor, actually. This is what I feel. But it does become a problem if the action in the first place itself is actually either one of anxiety or of, whatever it may be. That does leave a bad taste, I suppose. That's my experience. So it's not just possible all the time, but once in a while one gets it right. Sanjay?
There's a bit of disturbance having seen.
Sanjay, you want to share something?
Yeah.
Yes.
Chirojai is waiting.
Oh, Chirojai.
Chirojai, say then, Sanjay. Yeah, Chirojai, go ahead. There's a disturbance coming from one phone.
It's a lot of disturbance.
Hello? Hello?
Yeah, now it is one.
Hello?
Continue, Chirojai.
Chirojai, go on.
Kamalji, when we are holding something, like you said, that action which is spontaneous, when we hold something in ourselves, there comes the need of clarity, because the holding mind requires clarity. The action which is instant doesn't require any clarity, because we are not doing, the action is without any thought. when you are just, as you said that a beggar or somebody is required help in a street side. So we just start on thinking how we are affected while helping that beg or whoever. So that thinking mind starts. Then we require clarity that what it happens, fear, and anxiety, and all these things. But a action is clear, pure, that I require to help him. That doesn't require any clarity. That is action. Action without any kind of contamination. Instant action. That's it.
It's a good thought. Kamalji, do you think it's a good idea for us to go through the video shortly now? Because I think it's 12:15. I can't hear you, Kamalji.
Sanjay wanted to say something. Sanjay,
Sure. And Shankar also hasn't said something. Yeah. Sorry, Sanjay.
Yes, regarding clarity, to me, what I observed through my life, whenever the mind is in operation, this mind means my self-interest is in operation, and I have some expectation where the mind is conditioned something. Okay, this is the conclusive end. I have already make a mind of end mind. I have some conclusion about the things. Then there is a confusion, because that thing is not as per my pattern of as per my want or as per my desire, or what if I have no expectation, if suppose I am expecting something but things are not happening according to my expectation, and I have some preconceived ideas, then there is a confusion. But when I pause myself, I have seen when I withdraw myself, I keep a pause, make a pause, and just stop looking the things from my self-interest. Then things are reopening and revealing. Then I'm finding there is no confusion. You see, I find my mind is tricky and playing tricks with me. So it is a state of my mind which sometimes bring clarity and sometimes bring confusion. So really, for me, it is always easy. Just give a pause, a gap, because in gap there is a life. I have always seen there is a kind of purity in gap, and that I myself reveal it. I am not looking anywhere, just giving a pause. That is, for me, that is a state of mind, and that clarity and confusion, all things are playing from past to future. Obviously, fear is also there, greed is also there, doubt is also there, expectation is also there. When I withdraw everything and just look without any observation, without any mind, playing with the mind, thought of the mind, or like things of the mind, then things automatically place in its own place. This is the thing which I observed from my life. Regarding what Gautam Da was asking me, Gautam Da, I was very clear from my very early life that maybe it is due to my self-interest, or maybe I am very selfish. If I am holding something grudge, or I am not, if somebody has hurt me and if I am going with that hurt, meeting that people with that hurt, maybe something is playing in my mind. Oh, then this self-interest will not be there. I will lose something. Maybe. But I am thinking the person who may have hurt me may be in different mood, different mind, and maybe some other reason. Maybe he's feeling okay, Sanjay is the person where I can express myself. Maybe I am not the target. So without putting all these things in that hurt or in that word, I'm looking fresh. I'm meeting him maybe with my self-interest. So I find the same person will turn me in different way. He comes with me a lot of love, with lot of different attitude, different perspective. So this is my way of idea. Maybe my mind is not remembering anything. Maybe I always feel I am not remembering anything. What happened yesterday? It doesn't mean my memory is weak. Maybe I'm not giving too much focus, too much importance to all these things or all to this hurt, maybe. But because I am always looking ahead, maybe why am I not exploring other things, which maybe I may get from that person or maybe that kind of things. So most of the time I am not remembering anything, what people have told, and maybe I was from my childhood, I thinking, maybe I am not trying to understand all these things. I try to not, why I will understand everything. That was also in my thing. So that is my way of looking people differently and thinking, seeing the things differently. This is my way of life. Thank you.
So, what we could do now, we had planned,
Kamalji, you have to unmute yourself. Kamalji, you need to unmute yourself.
Sorry. So, as perhaps, I had mentioned in the beginning, that around 12:15, we would screen this very short video, which will be very interesting because Krishnaji actually is responding to a question. And I think I found it very interesting. And maybe after that 15 minutes, again, we can perhaps have a short chat before we conclude. So that video is about observation and seeing. Somebody asked a question in Brockwood. I thought it was put very beautifully. Over to you, Sayar.
Sure. I'll just, getting Gautam on, he went off by mistake.
Kamalji.
Yeah.
I am continuously reminded while this talk is going on, in the back of the mind, I am continuously reminded of two lines written by Rabindranath Tagore.
Yeah.
I don't know how, later maybe I will try to translate it. মনের মধ্যে নিরবধি শেকল গড়ার কারখানা একটা শিকল ভাঙে যদি গড়ে ওঠে চারখানা. That our mind is in a continuous process of creating chains, shackles for us.
Yes.
And if we break one, 4 others erupt.
That is right.
Very true.
This is.
Okay, I'm now putting everyone on mute. I'll just put this video on.
How do we tell the difference between observing ourselves in the sense you mean and merely thinking about ourselves? How do we tell the difference between observing ourselves in the sense you mean and merely thinking about ourselves, right? Do you have got the answer? Thinking about ourselves and observing about ourselves. There are two different things according to this question. Thinking about oneself, which we all do. I am making progress. I am better than yesterday. I have my problems, which is thinking. I wish I had better food, better clothing, better housing, or I wish I had more sex, for money. Thinking about oneself all the time, which most of us do. Even the austere monk, he does think about himself, right? Only in the name of God, right? And the questioner says, what is the difference between that, thinking about yourself, and observing yourself, right? Right, that's the question. Now, we know what it means to think about ourselves, right? It's really going round and round in a circle. Either expanding the self, the ego, or contracting the ego. Right? I am the world. I am God. I must be more kindly. I must love, I must be more intelligent, I must meditate in order to achieve whatever they want to achieve. So we are all caught in that. And observing oneself is something entirely different, right? Then let's find out, what does it mean to observe? Do you understand the question? We're together in this. Come on, Sidney. First of all, do we observe anything without the word? Do we observe the mountain and not call it mountain? You know? Do we observe the evening light on the cloud with its most extraordinary color, beauty, and something immense? Can we look at those clouds and the mountain without a single using without a single word? Can we do that? You understand my question? Don't look so paralyzed. That's why, can we look at anything objectively? The trees, nature, the waters, the sky and the evening star, and the silence of the morning, this extraordinary world we live in, natural world. Can we look at anything without a single word? And to find that out, we have to go into the question why the brain is caught in a network of words. You understand my question? Are we together in this? Now we are asking, can we look at anything, including my wife, my husband, my daughter, the politicians, the various gurus and the priests and all the circus that goes on in the name of religion? Can we look at all that without reaction first? Then find out if we can look at all that without the network of words interfering with our observation. Can we do that? Have you ever tried that? When one looks at one's wife or husband, can you look at her or him without all the images, all the things that you have accumulated about her or him, just to look? Can you? You're exceptionally silent when I talk about the husband and the wife and the girl and the boy. So one has to find out why the brain is so caught up in words. When you say he's a communist or a totalitarian, you have wiped it out, right? You have put him in a category, in a cage, and that's the end of it. Oh, he's British. or he's French, or he's an Indian, or he's this or that. See what is happening to our brain. Linguistically, the brain has been caught with words, not the significance and the depth of the word, but just the word. This requires careful watching. Watching is to observe. There was a balloon going up this morning, you must have all seen, and you watched it, going up and up and up very, very, very slowly. The gondola hanging, and you saw the whole thing. Then you might say, my God, I wish I were up there. Or you say to yourself, how dangerous. And so on. We never look at anything without words, without reaction. Look. Now you're all sitting there, and you're unfortunately seeing the speaker. And you've already put him into a category. You already have an image about him. You already said he's this, he's that, or he's some kind of idiot, or whatever you like to say about him. So you never he's forgot to whisper. So you never look at him as though for the first time. You understand? Have you ever done this kind of thing? Not just for a minute or for an hour or a day, but the freshness of the mind, brain, you understand? Which is not caught in words and look at everything as though for the first time you're looking at the world. That observation is to watch oneself, never allowing a single thought to escape without knowing, without watching it, being aware of it, giving your whole attention at one thought. And then another thought, keep at it. So that your brain is tremendously attentive. You see? So that watching is not egocentric movement, whereas thinking about yourself is egotistic, self-centered activity. This is clear, isn't it? Now, just a minute. How do we move from this to that? Right? You're asking naturally, you must ask that question. Or am I asking the question and you're accepting it? You understand? Suppose one is self-centered, I am self-centered, egocentric. All my outlook is personal. I am not loved, I must love. No, you know, all the kind of turmoil, silliness that goes on. I am that, one is that. Then how am I How is it to move to the other? Right? You're asking that question, aren't you? Is that the right question? Moving from here to there. That's a wrong question, obviously. Because if you move from here to there, that is the same as this. Let's move. Do you understand this? If I say I am selfish, now I must not be selfish. I must observe. The must is still in the same category or same movement as thinking about oneself. Right? Are we together in all this? Some of us are, I hope. So the question then is answered. Not the answer is outside the question, but the answer is in the question, right? That is observing the question itself. What it reveals. It reveals tremendous wrong. Because this is, you see, observing, if I can put it differently, observing, perceiving has no time. The other is caught in time. Thinking about myself, I will fulfill one day. I have no roots now, but I'm going to establish roots sometime. I have no identity. You follow? All those are time-binding quality. Time-binding quality is essentially the self. I don't know if you want to go into all that. I'm finding all this as I talk, right? Whereas the watching, if you watch that bird, there's no time in that at all. You're just watching, right? So the word and thought create the time. I don't know. Right? You got it?
So Zen, I think before we're almost approaching around 12:35 or something, but we haven't heard two voices at all. One is Karthik. So I just wanted to ask Karthik and Shankar if they want to say something before we conclude our session today, because we are closing in on 12:40, I think. Karthik, would you like to say something, Karthik?
I think you have to unmute yourself, Karthik.
We are discussing about confusion. What is already discussed in many ways. What I find, self-interest is the prime factor to create confusion. Until we have division amongst us, the confusion will remain. Until we can transcend our thought, memory, time, confusion will remain. So the question is, big question is, can you explore the silence part in us, silent part in us? I think the confusion can be removed if we can understand the silent part within us. And that silent part create oneness in this universe. And from this silence, we can have compassion to this universe. And there will be no confusion at all if we can explore the silence portion within us. And the silent portion can save us from all these confusions, not the words of confusions. The many words of confusion cannot save us from this confusion. That's it. Thank you.
Shankar's background is very good. You know, I mean, he looks as though he's in the skies. Shankar, you look as though you're in the skies. Would you like to say something, Shankar? Actually, you missed the first part, but would you like to? You missed half an hour or so. Would you like to add something?
No, sir. I have nothing to say. Thank you.
Okay. So, I just had a message from Sudeshna. She's attending her mother. Some problem has cropped up.
Oh, but she sent me a contrary message saying that the bus did not arrive today.
No, she sent a message in the personal message as well as in the.
We'll share the recording with her. Yeah,
we'll share the recording. So, is there anything else anybody wants to add before we conclude? Yeah. In fact, I think I wanted to share anyway. I shared with Yuga that it's an open invitation to anybody to write in our website blog. So I've requested Yuga because Yuga is a very multi-dimensional personality. He's a combination of Spain and Iran and Japan and Venezuela and whatnot. So we requested him to write in our blog, but that invitation extends to everybody. I'll put it in the email also, even somebody like Harsha, because Harsha spans two worlds. She has had personal contact with Krishnaji and she has had personal contact with the mother also, with whom she has. So she spans
such a blessing.
So interesting it will be, Harsha, if you write something also in the blog. And what Chirajai was saying, actually, he was very excited because, these online orders, from the website, they are growing a lot at a very brisk pace. And in fact, there is including a surprise order from a person called Kenneth Wakefield in New Zealand. He wants us to send books from here. So I was wondering why. But he's obviously not finding a center there. So we are sending books to him from here. He has been at Brockwood, he has been at Rishi Valley, and also he's very excited. Chirajai is very excited about the fact that though the center is closed, but the online connections are very strong. And the third thing that I wanted to share is that we will soon have a Bengali website, which should be ready in a month or so. And we will soon have to populate it. So people who communicate in Bangla, we'd request you to write for us in that blog. Some of you have already written a blog in English, but some of Bangla. So we will need to.
But Kamalji, there's a fourth thing you forgot to share. That is, Yuga is going to take the moral responsibility to get us all back physically in shape, right?
Yes.
We are mentally trying to get back in shape, but we are losing this physical thing. So Yuga is going to drive us to do that, right?
Man has actually, you guys gave us an open invitation.
Yeah.
You guys gave an invitation that all of us are welcome to come to Japan after the
self-invited after the thing is over. Absolutely.
So that's it. I think what as Shankar rightly said, as Sanjay rightly said, it was good that we just stuck to selecting one core thing and trying to go into it, because then we still have a lot to do with it. Lots of sessions can come up again where we can focus again on specific things. We really touched on something, and hopefully I think many of these sessions, they reveal something after the event, perhaps when there is time for conjecture and one taking a walk, and never know what turns out, and even things from that short video which are very revealing.
Absolutely.
So with that, because it's almost nearing 1, thank you to everybody for coming today. We missed 1 or 2 people, but we look forward to the next session. So
we'll have the video sent across in a week's time. Yeah. Surely.
Thank you all.
Thank you all.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
All the best.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye all.
Bye.
Bye, Shankar. Bye, Gautam.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye, Yash.
Bye.
Bye. Bye, Durga.
Yeah.